Let's hit it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation, as usual, as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about.
Well, welcome back to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and if you liked our opening song, it's called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band, and you can download that on any of your favorite music platforms. For those of you that are new to our show, we are about sound information, not just sound bites. We want to talk with real people in the trenches doing real things and find out what's working and what's not. Think about, why are you interested in our show? Because chances are you could be our next guest. You know something that maybe somebody else needs to know as well. So reach out to me at radio@alzheimerspeaks.com. Now, before I introduce our guest today, I always like to do a couple of shout outs. And one I have to shout out to, because time is a ticking on this one, is Maud's Ventures. Maud's Ventures is giving seed money, $50,000 to $100,000 for 3 different challenges. One has to do with aphasia, another has to do with adaptive clothing, and yet another has to do with respite care. So go to Maud's Ventures to learn more. I also want to give a shout out to Dementia Map, our global resource directory that is so much more than just a directory. You will find events and blog posts, all kinds of things. And if you're interested in being listed, we do have a 25% off our paid plans, but keep in mind, we do have a free one as well. And for users, there's no cost. You don't have to register. No identity information is given. No membership is made, so you don't have any passwords. It's just simple and easy to explore. I'm so excited because memory cafes are coming back online. And so if you go to memorycafedirectory.com, or if you search them out on Dementia Map, you will find which ones are now live and in person and which ones are still virtual. Also, I just talked with Coral Health, and they are going to allow people to continue to download their 2 apps, Music First and Coral Faith, free until the end of 2021. So thank you, Coral Health. And let's see, Together for Dementia is going to be having a conference, which is a global conference. And you can find out more information by going to alzheimerspeaks.com on how to register for that. I want to tell you about a research project that is going on. They are looking for employees that are diagnosed with dementia, and their criteria is as follows. 1, you have to have received a diagnosis from a licensed medical professional. You have to be age 35 and over. You have to speak fluent English and be in the United States. And you have to be currently employed, part-time, full-time, or have recently left work because of dementia. And lastly, be willing to be interviewed remotely and have your interview recorded. And you can get more information on this research project by calling 203-510-3470. So next, we're going to hear from the Footbar Walker, and then we will be right back to introduce you to our guest today.
Introducing the life-changing Footbar Walker.
I'm Peggy from Danville, Kentucky, and I'm 91 years old. The Footbar Walker revolutionized my care of George. It absolutely benefits the patient and the caregiver both, and that's the beauty of it. It's so easy to use. It folds up just like a dream. I got it in and out of the car without any effort at all. The saving that I made from having to put him in a nursing home came to about $192,000.
Does someone you love use a walker? Do they struggle struggle to get up from a seated position? Are you a caregiver dealing with physical pain and stress as you help your patient? The Foot Bar Walker was designed to assist not only the patient, but also the caregiver. Patients have more control standing up, and no lifting from the caregiver is required. See how it works at thefootbarwalker.com. That's thefootbarwalker.com. Peggy, would you recommend the Foot Bar Walker?
Do I ever? I would not be in the health that I'm in today at this age had it not been for the Foot Bar Walker.
Well, we are so excited to have Kerry Mills Rutland back with us on the show. She is always filled with great information. And the last time she was here, she was single. Since then, she's gotten married and now is a proud new mama. And I'm so excited for them on their journey. Now, Kerry has been in the industry since 2002, and she has worked solely with people with cognitive impairment. She is the founder and president of Age Well Simply, and she has had many opportunities to share her expertise and her vision here in the United States, as well as in Canada, the United Kingdom, Hong Kong, and China. Kerry is co-author of I Care, a handbook for care partners of people with dementia. And she most recently authored Serving Residents with Dementia, Transformation and Care Strategies for Assisted Living Providers. She is well known and well respected in the industry. She is a local guest on radio shows and has been featured on PBS as well as CBS television. She is a national board certified health and wellness coach, and she is a trained practitioner in the Bredesen Protocol, which we're going to talk about today. And in this capacity, she works with clients and families that are focusing on interventions that can stop the progression of cognitive impairment, including that of Alzheimer's disease, and in many cases, helps clients strengthen and repair cognitive loss. Well, Kerry, I'm just so thrilled to have you on the show again. It's been a long time. Lots of things have changed. And so thank you, first of all, for taking the time to be with us today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, Lori. So always my pleasure for sure. Thank you.
Well, good. As always, I always ask every guest on the show if they've been personally touched by dementia in their own family or circle of friends. So if you wouldn't mind kicking us off, answering that question, and then we'll go into our line of questioning.
Sure. Yeah, so I wasn't, but the way that I got into this work was that after I had graduated college, I had a degree in international marketing. And so, the plan was to fly around the world and look nice and show up and say something, whatever someone paid me to do. And it turned out God had a totally different plan. So I ended up moving. I went to school in Arizona. I moved back to New York. I'm in New York. I'm working with my dad, and I start reading my Bible. It changes my life. And 2 years later, I say, okay, God, where do you want me to be? And I start working in a nursing home. And they changed my life. They radically changed my life. And then I ended up working specifically with people who have dementia. And I was like, great, what am I going to do here? And they ended up teaching me more than I could have ever taught them. And they kind of just became my world. I have enjoyed being in crowds of people with dementia almost more than crowds of people without. I love their genuineness, their straightforwardness, where you stand all the time. And I was 23 when I started with them. So it's been 20 years of being in an environment where you really get to, kind of learn and grow. And they've been my greatest teachers. So.
Well, how cool is that? It is funny when you get those epiphanies and your world just changes and you just know you fit in that slot. Well, why don't you tell us about Age Well Simply? What is it and why did you start this business?
Yeah. So after working with people who had dementia in the assisted living setting, right, I started my own business called Engaging Alzheimer's. And the whole idea was that I wanted to meet people early on and literally engage them, right? I wanted this disease not to be what took them, but rather they took the disease. And naturally, during all of that time, I was regularly being reminded of tactics and treatments and medications and research, and people were always sharing with me different ways that you could stop this disease. And yet I knew the disease and I knew the people, right? So when somebody says here's one pill that's going to fix the 49-year-old that's having rapid decline, And yet the 87-year-old who has intermittent, like to me, it was always like, there's got to be more to this because they probably aren't coming from the same place. But I didn't know what it was. And to me, it didn't matter. I was all about behavior management and engaging in life and, maximizing life. And so a number of years ago, I read the work of Dr. Dale Bredesen, and his work made sense to me because it was about engaging people in all the ways we already knew, right? There's nobody who's watching this. And if you're watching this, you're one of the first people to watch it, then what I'm about to say, you're going to hear everyone else in the world say. But you have to exercise, and sleep matters, and reducing medications, and being careful about medications, and engaging people so they're not just sitting around bored all day, right? All of these things we knew in a vacuum would work and would help people. But what his work did, he said, for starters, we got to do all of it, right? We're dealing with the brain. We're not dealing with the liver, right, that regenerates. We're dealing with the brain, which is the most complicated organ we have, and we can barely even go in and poke around for fear that we'll mess something up, right? On top of that, what he said was, rather than try to find a solution for something we don't know where it comes from, he said, why don't we look at everything that makes the brain function well, and then let's examine what that looks like when people aren't well and see, what's not at top speed or what's not optimal, and let's try to get there. So anyhow, I followed his work, loved his work, started to see, saw the results coming out, that people were really having success with it. And so the thing was, it was really complicated. And so in my learnings of it, and in my, really saturating myself with it, moving to Seattle to work with a physician for 1.5 years to really understand it, I decided that I wanted to help people do this, right? I wanted to engage people in doing this, but it had to be in a way that was sustainable in real life because it was very complicated. And so that's sort of the notion, right? And so there's something for everybody, for you, for me, for a 30-year-old, for a 20-year-old. If we live well every day, if we make decisions every day, the right choices, right, then we're going to age well naturally. And so I want us to be able to do this in a way that's simple. So for the protocol, certainly I want to help people go through it, and I want to help them do it well and simplify it as much as they can in their life. But it also works for somebody who says, well, I don't have a problem, but I want to be better. Okay, well then let's start with where you're at and where you'd want to be, and let's slowly put those changes into place so that we can support and help people make sustainable change. That's where the business came from.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit more? Let's go in a little bit more depth in terms of, you've got a prevention plus and an intervention plus programs that you have. So I know I'd love to learn more about that, and I know our audience would as well.
We'll start with prevention, right? So for everybody who sits there and says, my goodness, my mom, right, your situation. My mom died of this disease. I watched her go through it. I don't want to go through it. What do we know based in science today? Is there anything that you can be doing that will help you prevent the same destiny she had, right? Prevention is also for the people who hit menopause, right? All those women that hit menopause and talk about menopause fog. There's a reason that your brain is doing that, and it's obviously change in hormones is a big part of that, but there's other things that are going on in your body as your bones start to break down. Toxins that have been stored in your body begin to be released. Your body doesn't know what to do with them, doesn't get rid of them fast enough, right? And then on top of that, if you live in the Northeast, for instance, pretty much everyone here is vitamin D deficient, which we know vitamin D, using that as an example, right, an easy one. We know how important that is for cell growth and cell energy, et cetera, et cetera. So for people with prevention, you don't have to do the full program, right, because you're not really having a problem yet, but you want to get ahead of it. So there's an element, there's diet. We look at your exercise. Sleep is a big one, just helping people, like ruling out sleep apnea. It's amazing. Sleep apnea has always been, people think of, the 10 plus overweight male, right? That's who wears a CPAP machine. And I have worked with so many petite women who you'd never in a million years think that they had any kind of problem. And they in fact do. And so what's happening right at night is they're starving their brain. They're literally suffocating themselves, in their sleep while they're, not getting the oxygen they need. So sleep is a big one. And then we run a handful of tests. So rather than the full battery of tests, we just do a handful. So we look at people's APOE genetics. We look at how people methylate, which has to do with how they detox. And then we also just kind of do a basic panel and a few different markers of inflammation, of toxic biotoxin markers, a panel of nutrients and vitamins, hormones, right? So we're getting like a small picture, and then if something in any of those categories is off, then we'll go and we'll dig it a little bit deeper. But in the event that they come back and they're fairly stable, but maybe not optimal, then we'll help people to optimize those areas that need it, and then again focus on lifestyle, and that's where these small subtle changes, right, begin to take hold. And so the prevention program, we stay committed to each other for 6 months, because during that time, there's time to find out what any problems that might exist, address them, and then begin to put the changes in place that again are sustainable for somebody who can go on to make those changes. Some people want to stay on and want to keep doing the health coaching component and want to retest, and that's fine, right? But as far as really making sure that a person is identified their problems and fix them, 6 months will take care of them. The intervention program is it's the same thing, it's just more in depth. And we go together longer, right, if you will, where our date is a longer time frame. It's a year instead of 6 months. And the reason being that we already have a problem, right? So we know we have a lot that we're going to have to fix. And now, we're in a sprint, not a marathon, because the brains have already started to make change, and we're trying to stop a disease that we barely even know where it's coming from, right? And so those guys, we not only does it take longer to implement it, but then also we need to make sure that they stick with it so that they really have that compliance, because compliance is key. Without it, nobody will do well on this protocol. Like, it's not like they can take a medication. If they don't fix anything else, they might see success. I mean, the protocol is the medication, if you will. The other component that we include in that is a lot of dementia care coaching. So, it's a spouse that's doing that, the wife is doing this for her husband, and yet her husband is resistant. Her husband doesn't remember why he's doing this. Her husband gets confused really easily. So we're going to slow things down where we can, right? Husband doesn't understand components of it, right? So all these different things that are naturally going to come up. And I find then a lot of other things come up, right? People, how do you look for a caregiver comes up. How do we find somebody who can join our team that meshes with my husband, those sort of things. And so we've also just allotted time within the program to be able to meet those needs, because again, that's what it's going to take to be successful with this protocol. So those are sort of the two different programs that we have.
Okay, so I had a couple of questions on both of them. Do people do this on an individual basis, or do they do it like on a group basis? Because one thing when you were talking, and my mind works weird, excuse me. But I was thinking, how cool would it be to be in a group that supports one another? I mean, you have like, the Weight Watchers and things like that that work together, and you're just adding in a few other things with the process. I just thought, that would be, kind of interesting and could really support people. And then, if they're dealing with a neurodegenerative, disease on top of it, that ties them in to support as well with that. So sure. I didn't know if that was something that you do or have done, or are considering doing. So I thought I'd throw it out there.
I love it, Lori. Always let them ride, for sure. So interestingly, so there's the individual component, right? Because people have individual labs, and those parts obviously are specific. And then where people are at in the change. One of the things, we've talked a lot about how to make all of that work. And while we can certainly do it on Zoom, and that might be part of where we end up going with it, that might be part of it. Ideally, we would love to have small pods who will eventually also be able to be together in person. So nothing can motivate like peers doing the same thing, living it the same way. For me to say, I know it really stinks that you can't have your favorite ice cream tonight. That's great, but I get to go have my favorite ice cream, right? Whereas when somebody says that to somebody else who's already lived it, done it, and has had success, or is just in the process, it just holds such a different value, right? So group, we would love to. We've actually been in conversation with a number of, with a hospital in one area and a different group in another, to do it as a group. And so it's just with COVID and everything that happened there, it just sort of sidelined things. But absolutely is the answer. And for sure, even if we had, so say we got a call from somebody who said, hey, me and my girlfriends want to do this, right? Or I've got this group and we want to do it. Can we make that work? The answer would be absolutely. Let's figure out how to do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then under the intervention, do couples ever do it together? Because I'm thinking a lot of times this is husband and wives or, partners or friends or whatever. And a lot of times we do something for the person with the issue.
Yeah.
But does the person interested in prevention or just being supportive, do you see that model very often where they work together? So, it's not that I can have ice cream and you can't.
Right. Right. Yeah. So spouses are where we see that the most. And I would say almost all spouses end up doing it. So some spouses will even come. So we have kind of a mix of three. We have the one who does it resentfully, which I always feel for them, but we have that who nobody asked them to do it, but I understand why they do it, which PS doesn't fare well because now you have two miserable people and one can't lift the other. So I don't recommend being that couple. Then you have the second set, which is the couple that says, I'm going to do everything she does because I just want us to be in this together. So absolutely, that's the majority of them. And then I've actually worked with a number who say, you know what? I want to get my blood work done. I want to find out what's impacting me, even if I'm doing it for prevention or I'm not showing any signs. It's partly to be supportive to the spouse, but then it also is sometimes they're curious for themselves. Like right now we're working with a gentleman and his brother. Every time I said something about the protocol, he would answer for his brother. And then he'd say, but I want to tell you, like, I have this going on. I have that going on. I'd love to see what mine looks like, right? Because you can't help but be curious. Like if you learn information, you want to see how it applies to you. So absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and to me, it kind of reminds me of, because again, a lot of people go into that, with their feet out and you're just pulling them in, going, come on, we're going to do this. And there can be a lot of resistance. And I think sometimes that happens even with healthcare directives and wills and things like that. And if you can do it together, it just takes the scary out of it. And it doesn't make people feel different. Really focuses everything more on smart living versus being fear-based or waiting for the other shoe to drop. And once that happens, you're behind the 8 ball already.
Actually, even to that point, just before COVID hit, I was leading small group. I had a small group that was meeting in person. And part of what we did, like one of the things they said is like, we hate it when we go to a restaurant, like we can't find anything to eat, or we go to like a regular support group and we can't have any of the snacks. And so part of what we did was we always made sure like we had them bring the food one day, or we would provide the food another day, so that there was that sense of camaraderie. And then the group started going out to eat together because somebody had found a restaurant and knew what you could order. And, so I mean, to your point, it was like, this is doable. And if we do it as a team, it's just so much nicer than doing it alone. So whether it's one person or a group. Yeah. Yeah.
It'd be neat if the Bredesen Protocol did kind of like what a Weight Watchers does, where they have their books of this is what works and this doesn't work, for you, just a guide, or even just simple tips that are handed out or passed around as one person learns, hey, this is what you can have here.
Right. Exactly.
Works, just having that well to be able to mine. So once somebody goes through kind of the testing and stuff, you said 6 months for the prevention and then a year, for the intervention. How often do you meet, and, how are you meeting? Again, it sounds like it's Zoom right now because of, where we're at with things.
Right.
But I would imagine they have to come into clinic to, get blood draws and things like that initially.
Sure. Yeah. So, and actually just even to meet the person. So if people live local, then naturally we see them in person. But if people don't live local, then we can start them off by way of Zoom as well, right? I mean, I'm not going to North Dakota anytime soon, or to Minnesota for you, but I'm not going to New Mexico. They're not coming here. So certainly we can do a lot of it via Zoom. There's certain things that wouldn't be able to be done if the doctor doesn't meet the person naturally, but from a health coach perspective, and if I can help them find a doctor in their area, certainly then we can move along the same exact way. To answer your question, we meet weekly. So the first month or so is spent with them getting the blood work, kind of getting like, so we have our initial consult, and then they have to get all of the information. So they have to do blood work and any other specialty tests, get an MRI. And after we have all that information come in, then we meet. And that to me is kind of like day zero, that's the getting started day. And so from there, then we meet on a weekly basis. So whether it be for 6 months or whether it be for a year.
Okay. So when they do like testing and stuff, does that stuff go through their normal insurance then?
So it can. So it's twofold. So for some people, they just go to Dr. Bredesen's site and they purchase the lab. So now these days for prevention or intervention, you can actually just go to, it's apollohealth.com. You can go there and you can actually buy the set of labs. It's just under $1,000 for intervention, and I think just under $500 for prevention. And the upside to that is that what you're going to pay in co-pays, and if so say you say I want my doctor to order it and I want it to go through insurance. I say okay, and I email you all the lab codes and all the information your doctor would need. There's a lot of tests on there that aren't part of what doctors normally order. Not that they're foreign, but it's not part of the normal stuff. And so what ends up happening is that if they don't code it right or they don't put the right diagnosis or something, then you're stuck with potentially this large bill, right? Or depending on what your insurance doesn't cover. And it's hard to know all of that information ahead of time. So for somebody who's like really good at like calling their insurance company and making sure that all the right stuff is done before, and they have the time and they know how to do that, then that's a great option for them. But for a lot of people, for that initial set, it's easier just to purchase this packet, purchase that plan, and then we go from there. There's a couple of tests that aren't included that we do want. And so those ones we would locally, we work with a particular doctor named Dr. Zislis. But if it was somebody who was out of state, then we would just have we would send that person what they need for their doctor to order it. Follow-up tests are done by their doctor.
Okay.
For Dr. Zislis here.
Yeah, and that whole coding stuff, I mean, it's complicated because you can be on the phone with your insurance company, you got it all set. I know I had that even just with, I think it was my eyeglasses, and it came back, it's not covered. And I'm like, okay, I've talked to everybody I was supposed to talk to. I have this written down. I called back. They're still telling me the same thing. And then they're like, well, don't worry. In like 3 or 4 months, we'll get this all figured out, but it's just a hassle. And then it's stressful, and people don't need that extra stress. So if they can, and
I don't want people being all of a sudden slammed with $2,000, that didn't get covered from Medicare when you're not expecting that. I mean, it's one thing if you can afford it or not. It's another when you just don't expect it. And all of a sudden that's on your, on your table. So, but those are the two options. And like I said, there's follow-up blood work every 3 months, different blood work at the 6-month marker and 12-month marker. And so that stuff, then we do just have the doctor do it.
Okay, great. Why don't you tell us kind of what you think your secret sauce is that you give clients that other people don't?
So I think really it's our motivation partly, and then our attitude. So our motivation is that we have seen thousands of people with this disease. I could write the story for most people these days just upon one meeting, right? You could as well. Based on what you see, based on the symptoms you see, this is where you're going to be in a couple of months, in a couple of years, whether you're going to be a long liver or a shorter lifespan. I mean, I've seen so many people pass away with this condition. And as much as we try to make it great for people, and there are so many stories where it goes beautifully, there's just as many stories that don't, right? Despite doing everything right. And I mean, like, care facilities do it right and families do it right. But, when somebody falls and now all of a sudden, this independence they had and they just lost it, and now cognitively they're going to decline. Like, there's so many situations that I've seen, not to mention just in general, the progression of the disease. For me, the motivation to see somebody help them not be the end of their life. I mean, I could go 100 miles based on that motivation. You know what I mean? So that's part of it. And then the second thing is our perception. We are people who believe it can be done. We don't look at roadblocks and see them as, a 10-foot wall that we can't get past. We see them as something we just have to break through, that we have to go around, that we have to climb. Never said it will be easy, but we will be here every second of the way. We will be your partner in all of this. We have a dynamic set of strategic partners. So when it comes to, bam, this is hormones are your issue, we know where you need to go. We don't want people wasting time trying to figure stuff out. We've already been there. We've already done that, and so we can, part of that also is that's dementia, that's the disease, that's how you manage that today. One of the crazy things is as people do this protocol, they kind of go backwards, through the disease process. All of a sudden, people become a little more resistant. People become a little more independent. You forget I wished I had it, but it's not that easy all the time. So we've already been there, done that, right? So we also have the workarounds for all these things. So our mindset of we believe this can be done. This is hope to live on. This is something that can be done. And if you want to do it, we are the people who will be here to do it with you. And like I said, we figured it out. We're constantly looking to see how we can simplify it and make it more manageable for people, more cost effective for people, more embraced in their life, helping them share it with friends or family members or physician, anybody who disagrees with it. We're there to counter that. So that mindset and that motivation are truly what make us different. And then add our whole team to it. And it becomes a one-stop shop. So people aren't going to be left running all over trying to find all the right resources. We already know who they are and where they are and how to get in contact with them.
Well, one of the things I have to say, Kerry, is, you are, to me, just a trusted soul. You have been living and breathing, in this industry. And one of the things I adore is you don't see roadblocks. You just see an opportunity to learn something new on the way. This is a detour, and what are we going to take from this experience? Because no matter what it is, we can help others, through this process. And to me, that's a huge value in not feeling alone and having somebody who really understands things. Now, I'm sure there's some people out there that just opt not to do this, or they just don't succeed in the program. Can you talk about why you see those two sets of people, and why do you think they choose to opt out, or they just don't quite succeed even though they're on the program?
Sure. Yeah. So the first group, it's hard. That's what it comes down to. Change is hard. If I'm doing this for my mom, and my mom is 85 or my mom is 75, and I want her just to live well, and I don't want to have to tell her everything she can't do, and she'd never exercise. What does that look like today? And, it feels like you're staring up at a mountain, and yet I want my mom to do better, and I don't have the perspective of what the next 5 years of her life looks like, right? As her daughter, Kerry Rutland, do, because I've seen it so many, but she doesn't have that. And so she says, I'll take what's coming. And meanwhile, I'm like, you don't know it, but this disease is going to be hard. Everything, like, you have more ahead of you than you actually realize, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you what that is, right? But I can change what's hard, and I can insert into the equation hope, and I can insert into the equation helping, right? Because so much of this disease that's so hard is that you feel so helpless, like you're watching somebody deteriorate, or you're watching yourself deteriorate, and then you're told there's nothing that can be done. And so, people want the hope, they want to be able to do something, but it's a lot of work, it's a lot of commitment, it's time, it's energy, it's mindset, it's finances. And so I find that one of those, somewhere in there, are the reasons that people say, I just don't think I can do it. And I get that. And I'm actually really okay with that. I think it's, there's a verse in the Bible that talks about counting the cost, and talks about this man who's building a house, and then he realized he didn't have the money to finish building the house. So everybody thinks he's like kind of a dork because he didn't count the cost ahead of time. So he's got this half-built house. And I think that for the people who do this halfway and then drop out, they actually feel worse than if they never started, because they've been fed all of, we can do it, there's some hope here, we can do this. And then they feel even more responsible that then they didn't do it. And I'm like, you can't do that to yourself. You were fighting a terminal illness, and then you tried to stop it. Like, if you couldn't get there, don't beat yourself up. All you can do is like recognize all the efforts that you did make, right? So that's kind of that first group. The second group, they tend to, you know, it's a variety of why people tend not to get better. It's a smaller percentage. So when I looked at the group of people I worked with for about a year, I worked with 25 specific people. I was in their life every day. And so I kind of was able to see, you know, what's helpful, what's not, what can be triaged, what seems to be most valuable for some people versus other people, you know. And of them, 75% of people remained the same or got better. So 10 of them really kind of remained the same, but edged toward better, which again, in a year is unheard of with this condition. So I'll take it. And I'm basing this on MoCA scores, you know, what their neurologist said. I mean, not just my own, like, I think she's better, not that, you know, but like real testing information. 8 people literally tested better, whether it was their MoCA score, whether it was their neuropsych testing and or their neurologist commenting, you know, after doing their evaluative test. And then 6 of the people got worse. So I think, yeah, so there's 24 people, not 25. So 6 of the people got worse. And of those people, they had, I think part of it was we couldn't get to the real root of maybe what was going on for them. For some people, they might have been more advanced to start with. And so because of that, we were fighting a hill that was a little bit steeper to start with. For some of them, the person who was helping them, their care partner in it, it was just very stressful for them. And mind you, this all happened, and within, you know, in the first 5 months, it was, we were in it for 5 months and then COVID hit. So the isolation and just, you know, add life to it, that was really difficult for some of the care partners as well, because now they were totally isolated doing this by themselves, not even seeing family for months at a time and stuff. So it was a variety of reasons. Naturally, if somebody wasn't compliant, they didn't see success. But I will tell you that in working with them every week, there was nobody who wasn't compliant. They weren't all compliant 100% at all. You know, maybe they hit the mark between 80 and 90%. Nobody did it 100% except for one person. And so I think it's a variety of reasons within that. I try to also be really honest with people right out the gate of, you know, this is going to be harder for person A than it might be for person B, depending on what we're seeing. So that people, again, can just be realistic and, you know, go in with the mindset it will be tough, but that's okay because we're fighting a fight worth fighting.
Well, and I would imagine personality styles come in too, in terms of belief systems and all of those types of things. Yeah. And what type of support they have in their family and friends, you know, because our self-talk is real strong, but, you know, so is our peers and our family in terms of what's there, or, you know, is it a person who normally self-sabotages, right, you know, themselves? I loved when you said, you know, you're all right for those who decide not to do this, because it's probably better that they just step back than they try. And then, because stress is horrible on this disease, and, you know, we don't want to give them any reason to beat themselves up anymore. That's not going to help anybody. So who do you think is really like the right person for your service, and when is the right time?
So I don't think that you can ever be too early, because again, like I said, there's something for everyone. And so, you know, you look at 20-year-olds these days, they have stress that I've never known. You look at the group in the 30s, they have all kinds of depression and anxiety that I'm like, I don't understand why, like what happened to them that didn't happen to me, you know, you look at these different age groups of people and they're suffering in different ways. And so I say that because, you know, depression, is it something in the gut? Is it expectations? You look at stress, you just mentioned that, you know, stress single-handedly destroys the hippocampus, which is where we process new memories, right? So, gee, I'm stressed that I can't remember while I'm creating a problem for myself at the same time, right? You know, who's self-medicating with alcohol that destroys the frontal lobe, right? These are everyday people issues. These are not people with dementia issues, right? Exercise is you know, everybody has a gym membership, but nobody goes, right? Which is kind of the joke around New Year's and New Year's resolutions. But exercise is critically important for function in the entire body. And so, in my opinion, no year is too early. Certainly, if you start to be feeling like, gee, I don't remember like I used to, or I can't word find like I used to, or, I can't process things the way that I used to. Whatever you do at this point, don't just say that's normal. That's been a pet peeve of mine forever, because it's not, it's okay, it's normal if you can't remember the exact date you graduated middle school on. Nobody's talking about that, right? But if you're noticing this change in yourself, and that's why you're going to be your own best evaluator, then something is happening, right? So go find out what's happening, because to date, right, if you thought there was nothing you can do about it, it is scary. But it doesn't mean you don't do something, because you don't know what treatments might have been coming available. Well, today I can tell you that there's absolutely things. I mean, the amount of people that I've met that had a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment and now don't is astonishing. I never thought I would meet those people in my life, right? Because I never thought it would happen, right? People who had Alzheimer's disease, an actual diagnosis, and the neurologist is the one saying, you no longer meet the criteria. Or a neurologist who's been hearing about this program for a year and a half as somebody's doing it, and now the person's doing so well that the neurologist is saying, tell me again what it is that you're doing, right? A neurologist who does this all day long. So when you start to see a change in yourself, begin. Don't wait, because the earlier you catch it, the less overwhelming the whole thing is going to be. You'll have more of your own wherewithal to do it, but also there might not be as much that has to be changed. And so it won't be such a daunting program for you. So that would be my thought about when to start. As far as who, my feeling is that if you're somebody who's willing to dabble in change, let's do it. Let's do it. If you're unmotivated, if you're trying to make somebody else do it, it's not going to work. I can't drag you through this. My job isn't to show up and make people do it. Families say that all the time. Can you make them do it? I can't make anyone. I can barely make myself do stuff. I do not have the power to make anybody do anything. However, if you have the interest and you have the want, then we'll work together to find that motivation, find your reasons for wanting change, right? Is it grandkids? Is it just to live longer? Is it to feel good? Whatever the motivation is, we'll find that motivation, then we'll work together to build on that. But again, those who want to do it because they want to make somebody else be somebody different are the wrong people.
I can see that. And I can see families going, can't you make them?
Yeah.
And it's like, them better and you can't make them. How am I going to do it? But
they love you. They don't even know me,
Yeah. So it is interesting how we always think someone else can fix the problem. And it really is up to us to step forward. Well, is there anything that we haven't covered regarding Age Well Simply that you want our audience to know?
I think you covered it. I mean, again, I think the takeaway that I want people to have is that our brains are so important and there's so much we can do to protect them. And I would love it if in the next 10 years, there's so many more people who don't have Alzheimer's despite the current statistical projection. And on top of that, then they feel better, they're living better, they feel a little more in control of their own health. That's our desire for people at Age Well Simply. We want to work with you. We want to be the ones who come alongside you. At first it feels like, well, gee, I could do it by myself. If you can, then go do it. But if you're like most of us, the support system that's going in the same direction you are can often be hard to find. And so we want to be that group, right? Whether it's me and my team, whether it's a group setting like you were talking about, but we really want people to know that there is something that can be done about this disease, that you can live well into your old age with a really good, healthy brain, and it doesn't need to just be left up to fate and your genetics. There's something that you can do about it. So that's really the takeaway that we want people to have.
Well, I know a lot of times people will look at costs, and one of the things, just because of the new drug that got approved, that chances are, that $56,000, again, most of it will be picked up probably by Medicare, but they're saying anywhere from $6,000 to $11,000 you might be paying out of pocket. And, it's subject to, is this even going to work at all? And there are some pretty big issues that people could have, like swelling of the brain and things like that. And I'm assuming, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you probably don't deal with a whole lot of side effects in terms of what you're doing, because everything is kind of healthy based.
Sure. So I will correct you. There's actually a bunch of side effects.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably will lose weight if you want to lose weight. You will likely come off of any statin type drugs. You will likely come off any kind of diabetes medication. You will likely report feeling the best that you've ever felt. If you deal with constipation, that will go away. If you deal with insomnia or, distressed sleep, waking during the middle of the night, can't go back to sleep, can't fall asleep, that will go away. If you're dealing with a lot of aches and pains, those will likely go away. So there's a whole bunch of side effects that I think any of us would sign up for.
Okay.
But as far as negative ones, you're absolutely right. Because what you're doing is you're just trying to bring your body back to its optimal state. Mm-hmm. And so in doing so, there's nothing negative that goes with that, right? So if you hit, if you get a little diarrhea or something from a supplement, then you stop that supplement and your diarrhea goes away. It's nothing long term. That's probably the only one I've seen happen, with the exception of people who got worse, and they didn't get worse because of what we did. They just didn't get better, that is probably like the only side effect I've seen. And it's been extremely minimal.
Okay.
And we know how to work around it.
Wonderful. Because, when we say side effects, I think we automatically think of the commercials on TV. Oh, you might have and they're all negative. And, they're talking like an auctioneer, so we really can't even understand them all. So I'm so glad you pointed that out.
I did the play on words intentionally.
Yeah. No, I think that was wonderful. So if people are interested in getting in touch with you, they can go to agewellsimply.com, or they can email you at info@agewellsimply.com. And so phone number would be 914-962 0997. So thank you so much. This has just been really enlightening, and I always enjoy our conversations. I always learn so much from you. So thank you for being just such a power advocate in this space and always moving and shaking things forward.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you again for continuing to have this space for, all kinds of amazing work is being done around the world. And this is a platform for people to be able to come and listen and be able to get hope and learn about these things. So thank you. I mean, you continue to just provide the space for the voices. So thank you.
Great. Yeah. For our listeners, I hope you like, click, and share this. Don't keep this a secret. Share the secret sauce you just heard about, and reach out to Kerry and her team. I think you will be amazed at what you hear, during a consultation. I should ask. I just thought of this now. Do you do like a free consultation just to kind of step people through things?
Sure. So when people initially call, they'll talk to Tim, and he'll be able to sort of just get the lowdown of where they're at, and then be able to explain the details and, more specifically based on whatever they said to how it will, what it would look like for them. So yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So explaining it, just making sure people know what they're walking into.
Okay. Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Well, hi, I'm Lori LeBay, and I wanted to tell you about Alzheimer Speaks, which is another great podcast. You see, my own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and I felt lost. Did you know every 3 seconds someone in the world is being diagnosed with dementia? Odds are it's going to hit your families too. We want to help you connect to services, products, tools, research, and stories so you can be prepared. Please subscribe to Alzheimer Speaks on your favorite podcast platform.